everyone, and welcome to the OnlyLandFans show. My name is Kendall Lejeune, and our guest today is Pete Reese. Pete Reese is the president of Real Vest Properties, a land development and investment company. With nearly 2 decades of real estate experience as a broker and investor, Pete has successfully purchased and sold hundreds of pieces of real estate for a profit for himself and on behalf of his clients. He did $3.5 million in revenue in 2022 with his land flipping and development business, and he's pushing to do $10 million in 2023. Pete's always looking for his next deal, including his longtime dream of his own private island. Besides his professional accomplishments, Pete is a proud father to 3 beautiful girls, keeps up with his family by working out and enjoying a vegan diet, and is the 31st great-grandson of King Henry. Well, Pete, thanks so much for joining us. How are you today?
Well, I'm doing great, and I'm very excited to be here, Kendall.
Awesome. Well, we're so excited to have you. I mean, we have royalty in the house today. 31st great grandson of King Henry. That's absolutely incredible. I see that the royal family's still in the land game.
Yeah. This is something my daughter dug up after the number of years ago. She was on ancestry.com and kept following the clues back and back and back, and that's where it ended up. Well, it ended up before that even we were able to follow it, obviously, but so I think it's right, so that's why I'm using it in my bio.
That's very cool. It's a very eye-catching factoid, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So let's jump right in. How did you get started in doing land deals?
Yeah, I started doing my first land flip was in March of 2021. And I really started researching it in, I think it was right around Thanksgiving time of 2020. And then I sent out my first batch of mail right after that. But, I was just kind of looking to get back into real estate investing. Prior to that, I was working on a business with my wife, an online education business about blogging and travel blogging. And we were doing that for a number of years together. That was a great business, a lot of fun, lots of travel associated with that. But I was really getting the itch to get back into investing. And I kind of stumbled into the land flipping stuff just by reading things that people were saying about it online. And I thought it was a pretty cool business model. And I just sort of went all in on it. So
that is very cool.
Yeah, that first year we ended up doing about, so we flipped our first property in March of 2021. And then that first year we did about 1.2 million and some change in revenue at about almost 50% gross profit margin. And then 2022 did about 3.5, and 2023 looking to do 10 million this year. I'm already at about 3.2 million and some change so far this year. So I'm hoping the second half of the year accelerates some.
Wow, that is absolutely incredible. Now, did you have a real estate background prior to starting this real estate venture?
Yeah. So in the early 2000s, my wife and I, we started flipping some homes, kind of just started with us buying our own primary residence, fixed it up a little bit, did a lot of the work myself, very questionable quality, but somehow was able to sell that house for a profit, pretty good profit. I think $50,000. We bought the home for 195, sold it for 250, something like that. And I thought, well, this is great. Let's do this some more. So we started buying and selling and fixing up homes and then reselling them. And that was a great business until the market crashed in the 2008 area. But prior to that, I had gotten my broker's license in about 2006 out here in California. And I just got it to kind of get myself better access to deals. Like I was finding all of my deals on market. So I was able to show myself the homes, write the offers myself, and then get that buyer side commission. So that's why I did it. But then when the market crashed, we really were not comfortable flipping homes at that point because the buyers kind of dried up, except for the cash buyers. So I figured, why not use that license for something? So I focused on being an REO listing broker for the banks. And that was a number of years of my life. It was, I was thankful to have it because it kept me busy in a time when a lot of other people in real estate were really struggling. But it's a pretty crappy business in a way. You're the representative for the bank, so you're the bad guy. And obviously we just got assigned a listing. We had nothing to do with any of that. But a lot of emotions involved, a lot of tough circumstances, not something I would want to revisit in any way. But the bright side of all that was that I got some really good relationships with large investment companies out of that were looking for deals. So for a while there, I was just finding them as many deals as, they would buy as many deals as I could find them, and homes here in Southern California. So I was just focused on, and that was a great business, just kind of drumming up deals for them. And then I transitioned to doing that business with my wife for a while, got out of real estate altogether, and then got the itch to get back in it. That's how I ended up with the land stuff.
Bitten by the land bug.
Yeah, yeah, bitten. Yeah, that's right.
Fantastic. So tell us a little bit about like how did you learn? Obviously, you had a real estate background before you got into land. Were there any types of mentors or coaches that you worked with when you first started your land journey?
Yeah, I did buy a training program from I did Land Academy is the one that I bought. So I learned how to evaluate land. So that kind of taught me what I needed to know and kind of the basics of the process. And then I just took that and ran with it. I'm the type of, I kind of am a massive action type of person. If something makes sense to me and I understand it, then I just kind of go all in. So I started my first batch of mail I sent out was 10,000 letters, and then I did
Wow.
another 10,000 letters the next 2 weeks later. So at this point, I'm sending out it varies a little bit, but about 100,000 letters a month.
Wow. Okay, so let's just back up. I want to unpack a couple of things. So you sent 20,000 mail pieces your very first month of marketing for land, right? Did you
Yeah.
have some type of team or were you handling all of these leads yourself? What was that process like?
Yeah, at the beginning it was just me. I did bring over an assistant pretty quickly for that was working with me on our other business, and I was very familiar with him. And I was just kind of offloading some administrative type tasks, like list building, list scrubbing, things like that. So that was kind of my first team member that I brought on. But at the beginning it was me. I was taking all the calls. I was doing everything, and it was good because I really learned every single piece of the business. And as I've grown, I've brought on new team members, and I've just kind of taken a piece of what I've been doing and then created a role, for someone else to kind of focus on. So that's kind of how I grown my team over time.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I've heard it time and again, people that are expanding their team and they're really successful at doing it. They get really good at doing all of the roles first. That way they can offload and outsource those activities. So definitely understand that. Now, your very first deal, you mentioned your first land deal was in March 2021. Can you walk us through that deal? What was that like? What
Sure.
property was it?
Yeah, that one was in Washington State. It was actually in a kind of a subdivision, like almost like a resort type subdivision, like a seasonal place where people would go. There was a lake there. It's 5 acres. It was very sloped. But it was a place where people could put like an RV, carve out a pad, put an RV on it, then use the lake and kind of just use it recreationally. I think I ended up buying that property for 17,000 and some change. We listed it for 39.9, and then within a week or so got a cash offer for 35,000, and I thought, well, this is great. I'll take it. So I took it, ended up closing I think 2 weeks later, something like that. And then I don't remember what the exact profit was on it, but I think it was like 14, 15,000, maybe somewhere in that range. So that was a real win for me. And it was a confirmation. I knew the business model worked, but it was confirmation that I could make the business model work. And, I thought it was pretty cool. It was a pretty exciting day really when that closed.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, coming from the fix and flip model at first and all of the struggles and the timelines that go into that compared to, a lot in Washington that you've never been to before, sold 2 weeks later for, 5 digits. That's fantastic. I bet that was a great proof of concept for you.
It really was. Yeah, it was exciting. I knew it could work, but it's great to kind of prove it to yourself and to your wife in my case. So.
Yeah, there's something magical about that first deal when we say, okay, look, the money has actually hit the account. This is
Yeah, that's
works.
right. It's not
That
just me talking about how great it can be. It's actual reality. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. And so it sounds like you did, a quick infill lot flip, and you bought it. You self funded, right?
Yes. Bought it my own cash. Yeah.
Okay. And so what types of deals do you specialize in now? Are you still doing those types of deals, or how is your progression sort of evolved?
Mostly rural properties at this point, 10 acres plus. I'll do some 5 acre plus. These are the ones that we market to. And I'm starting to partner with other investors. They bring me deals and then I'll fund those as well. So I have no real set criteria that says I won't do an infill lot or I won't do things like that. But generally, the stuff that I try to market for, dig up deals are the rural vacant land type properties. 10 acres plus in most areas. Some areas I go down to 5 acres just because the lots are smaller and stuff.
Right. So how did you decide on that specific type of property versus, these super large subdivides or, focusing on only infill lots? How did you kind of zero in on what your target properties are?
Probably kind of random at first. I sent out a bunch of mail in a bunch of different categories, some very small infill lots to larger properties. And I think it resonated with me. Like, I like the fact that they're just pretty simple. Many of these rural vacant land properties are pretty simple in that, they're either recreational or a potential home site, but it's not super complicated. With some of these infill lots, there's a lot of due diligence that you need to do to really make sure that it is what you think it is and that you're not going to get burnt, because if there's one red flag that pops up, that's going to kill the whole deal for you, really. And you could be stuck with something that's not buildable. And then what are you going to do with a quarter acre non-buildable lot?
Absolutely. Yeah,
So
absolutely. I definitely understand that. And so these 10-acre plus recreational properties, what type of average net profit are you seeing on these deals?
over time, my average profit per deal, last year it was 22,000 per deal. This year it's actually creeping up. I think last month it was 34,000 per deal, but I think on average it's about, so far through June, it's about 26,000 is my average profit per deal in 2023.
Fantastic. So 2023, you had a $3.5 million revenue year. So that must mean that you were doing high volume. Is that right?
Yeah, 2022 was about 3.5. This year it's about 3.2 so far. So yeah, I think it was 79 properties last year we sold.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That is incredible. That's incredible. So tell us a little bit about, like, what does your team look like now?
Yeah. So my team, I've got a lead and due diligence manager. He pretty much is the one that takes any of the leads that come in and puts them into our CRM and kind of does some minor due diligence stuff, like creates a link for land ID and checks out the wetlands and flood zone and some basic things like that. Gets into the CRM. I've got head of acquisitions that kind of oversees the acquisition process. He's based here in the United States, and he evaluates the properties. He evaluates all the initial due diligence, and then also once we get under contract and get the further due diligence, he's also evaluating all that stuff, reviews title reports, and kind of brings red flags to my attention or anything that we need to discuss just to make sure it's still a go. And then I've got two acquisition managers that their job is to basically have the direct contact with the sellers, on the phone, text, email, however they want to communicate. And yeah, so I've got two of them. They're based in the US as well. And then I have another person on my team that basically helps me compile the lists, pulls lists, scrubs lists, helps them with the pricing on those lists, basically inputting the pricing that I put on there. I've got a transaction manager. She handles all the transactions on the buy side and all the transactions on the resale side. I've got an executive assistant that kind of helps me keep my act together and keep my whole team organized and everyone pulling together in the same direction. And then I've got another general assistant that kind of just fills in the blanks and a lot of the different things that don't fit into any of those standard categories. And then we use services, some outside services, like we have a phone answering service that we use that they're answering the phones 24/7. And obviously we use outside agents and escrow title attorneys, that kind of stuff. So, and then photographers for every property. So there's a lot of people that get involved with this, but
It's a village, it sounds like.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
That's excellent. Now, how quickly did you start implementing these team members as you started growing your business?
Yeah, well, I think trying to think on the timing here. I think it was during the first year, 2021, where I brought on an acquisition manager. That was kind of my first. Well, I had the assistant that is in the role of the lead and due diligence manager, and he was doing a lot of those things at that point. But then the first other team member that I brought on was an acquisition manager, and I believe that was in 2021, that same year that we started doing deals, like later in the year, if my memory serves me. And that was because I don't really enjoy being on the phone with the sellers. I don't like that part of it. I mean, I feel like I'm okay at it, but it's inconvenient. It's hard. It's tough to get stuff done if you're always, kind of, reacting and answering the phone calls and, that type of thing, or being persistent about trying to reach people again and things. So I knew that that was something I wanted to farm out right away. And I figured I can find someone that's probably better than me at it anyhow. So that's what I did. And then kind of from there, I brought on a transaction manager. Was another critical role for us because the paperwork stuff, and it's easy. I was doing all that myself, and I'm very familiar with that from my days as being a broker and paperwork and transactions, everything like that. But it's one of those things that you really need to be focused on is do the job right. And had my hands in so many different things. It's kind of like, I felt like I was always behind on paperwork and, opening transactions with the closing company, everything like that. So bringing on a transaction manager was huge to get some in that role that just does a great job and stays on top of all that stuff. So I don't have to worry about it. And then, and then I started adding other assistants and the second acquisition manager and then executive assistant, things like that. That's kind of how the progression went.
Excellent. Yeah, that's great insight. So 79 properties in 2022, that's, I mean, a huge volume. I know some people, do just a couple of deals a year, or they might be struggling to get, some consistent deal flow going. So what would you contribute to being able to do that many properties in 1 year? Hey, land fans. Looking for your tribe of serious land investors? Join thousands of your fellow land lovers in the OnlyLandFans Facebook group. We're talking real deals, expert strategies, and game-changing connections you won't find anywhere else. This isn't just another real estate group. This is the community where land investors come to level up. Join us at onlylandfansgroup.com and join the conversation today. That's onlylandfansgroup.com. See you there.
Well, it's my mindset. I always want to push and go bigger and bigger. Maybe it doesn't make sense to some, but it's just kind of, for me, I want to keep playing the game at a higher and higher level. And I feel like I need to keep pushing forward like that. So I think it has a lot to do with my mindset and just what I want to do. So I just kind of unpack that and decide, well, how am I going to do that? Well, first of all, I got to send out more mail. I got to get, we got to convert as many of these leads into actual deals and, stuff like that.
Absolutely. So doing that many deals that year, what were you finding were some of your bottlenecks to doing a high volume like that?
One of the things that's frustrating a little bit in this business is the title stuff. Sometimes we'll get, a lot of deals, not a lot, but there's a good percentage of deals that actually fall apart. Once we get a purchase agreement signed, we send it to escrow or title company, whoever, and then it comes back that there's a title problem or, there's more errors than we knew about or something like that. And so it's a little frustrating with that sometimes. But so I would say that's the biggest bottleneck. If it were just a situation where we could just, close like, direct or something like that, we'd be able to close a lot more, but then we'd have a big title issue. So it's a necessary part of the process, but it's also a little frustrating to me sometimes too. So
absolutely, that definitely makes sense. And so on each one of these properties, were you still self-funding these, or were you raising private money, or how were you going about funding the deals?
Yeah, the great majority of my stuff I do self-funding. I've partnered on a couple of the larger deals I've done so far, and I just bought a large farm. I used actually hard money for that, so I did the 70/30. So I put 30% down and got a 70% first. But for the most part, pretty much all self-funded. A couple of the bigger deals. One of them is it was a 650-acre property we bought for 315. We ended up reselling it for 595. So that was a pretty good one. The partner brought all the money, and then we just split the profits 50/50. And then I got another larger property that we bought not too long ago, 290 acres. And I think the price on that was like 365, something like that. So we're working on selling that one, but we've got it listed for quite a bit higher. So should be good.
Yeah, that is excellent. So these partners are you mentioned earlier that they were sort of coming to you to bring you deals, or were you actively seeking partners to do larger deals? How did that work?
Oh, those partner deals I just mentioned, those were deals that I found, through our direct mail and everything. And so yeah, now we've got at the point where I've got a training program in the community and things. So I've got people that are coming to me and bringing me deals and want me to fund them. So that's kind of how I'm finding some of the other deals now as well.
Yeah, so that brings up a really good point. I know several people in the space. They have communities, or they have some level of personal brand as a deal source channel, right? And so how did you go about, you mentioned some training programs, but can you tell us a little bit more about how you went about building that sort of outbound personal brand, that way that you can start generating?
Yeah. And honestly, I didn't, this is kind of a side benefit of what I was trying to build. I was trying to build a community. Um, and it's called Land Conquest, landconquest.com. But anyhow, it's a community that, just the whole goal of it was to bring land investors together. We've got brand new investors, we've got experienced investors, we got kind of the whole gamut, really. And as part of that, I did a whole free training program where I spent a lot of time and a lot of money to actually put together kind of a professional training program, and then I give it away for free in the community. And then, so my idea, it kind of like my idea was that I'd have kind of like just a higher end mentorship program at some point. I don't have anything like that available yet, but that was kind of my idea how I would, monetize it eventually. But then I was, some people were asking me about partnering on deals and stuff, and I thought, well, yeah, why not? I mean, that would be kind of a good thing. So I did a little program called Partner with Pete, and then basically, students are just kind of submitting deals, and I'm looking at them real quickly and saying yay or nay. And if it's a yay, then basically I take the baton and run with it, fund the deal, plug it in my whole team's process. And then on the backside as well, we handle all the marketing and resale, everything like that. And then we just split the profits 50/50 at the end. So
yeah, that's fantastic. That sounds like an absolutely great opportunity for people that are, might just be getting started and they don't have a lot of connections, or they just need more resources, right? That sounds like a fantastic opportunity for them. Very cool.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's been fun. So I'm finding deals in other areas that I've never mailed to or anything. So it's interesting to me too.
Yeah, I love that. That's very, very cool. And it sounds like just a great cause of giving back to the community. I love that free training program. I think that, when you pay it forward, it always comes back.
That's my idea,
Definitely. Love that. So shifting gears a little bit, can you talk to us about where do you see the market going now? And what are you going to do to thrive in the upcoming market changes?
Mm-hmm. Well, I track our metrics pretty closely. For the first 2 years, I was able to kind of average about 60 days on average, like hold time. So from the time we actually purchased the property to the date that we got a wire in from the resale, it was about 60 days on average. Now, in 2023, that's crept up some. It's been, I think it's just sitting at about 101 days right now, which is just over 3 months. A couple that there's a couple of reasons for that, but I think part of it is the market slowing down a little bit. The other thing is I've been focusing on larger properties as well, which, typically take a little bit longer to sell. But, my thought is with that, if the market does continue to slow down in certain areas, it has definitely. It's just a matter of you got to be more aggressive on your buy prices. Thinking back to my days when I was an REO listing broker for banks, basically I was their listing broker, and they would give me these property assignments and they would say, what's this property worth right now? Like, what could we sell it for right now? Because their goal is they just want to sell it for whatever the current market value is rather than maybe what was owed on the property. So they were very realistic when it came to that. And they had a lot of these things on their books and they just need to get rid of them. So I would evaluate it and give the current market value. But when I would list these properties, I mean, it was like a feeding frenzy. Even at the worst real estate market ever, if you could price things right, there was I'd have 17, 20 offers on a lot of properties. It's just crazy. So there was plenty of buyers out there. It's just simply about the price. And it'll be the same way if our market, struggles more. It's just simply about the price. You get a good property and you're able to list it at the right price, it's going to sell.
Definitely. So if someone's listening to this, I know a lot of people I've been having conversations with are struggling on on the dispo side. They're struggling selling the properties. And so if someone's listening to this and say, okay, it sounds like, the price may be an issue. Do you have any rules of thumb that you could kind of share with us about what does it look like to actually figure out what is the right price for a property?
Well, you have to be aggressive. You got to first of all go in with the mindset you're going to hold this thing a short amount of time. And if you put it on the market and you're not seeing the activity, I look at the activity on Zillow. You can see the views and the saves. That's kind of a interesting metric to look at to kind of get an idea of what type of activity the property has. If you're not seeing the activity, if the agent you're working with, if you're working with an agent is not getting calls and they're not getting the type of action, it's time to adjust the price, like 2-3 weeks in, and then consistently do that until you get to this spot where it's going to sell. Now, obviously, sometimes you're not going to make as much as maybe you initially thought you would, but it's better to make something and move on to the next property rather than to hold out and then, maybe the market adjusts below what you bought it for or something like that. So you don't want to take a loss on any of these properties. You want to be aggressive in reductions if you're not getting the type of activity. But, if a property is sitting on the market for too long, it's generally because of the price.
Yeah,
and people, it's mostly about the price.
Absolutely. Yeah. We've all heard, in real estate, there are a couple rules that we're all familiar with: location, 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 and price fixes everything. Right?
Yeah, it does. It does. Each of these properties is so unique. So it's hard to, especially in the rural stuff, it's hard to actually know what a property is worth. It's kind of an art. You can think, you get a good idea, you get opinions, you do all your research, but ultimately the market is going to tell you what it's worth. And if it's been fully exposed to the market, it's on the MLS, it's on LandWatch, it's on, wherever you're going to market this place at, and everyone sees the property and it hasn't sold yet, it's because of the price. You need to adjust the price.
That is a great piece of insight. Fantastic. Yeah. Fantastic. So shifting gears a little bit, I'd like to talk about some nuts and bolts of your process. So what do you look for when picking a market to market to for your business?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I look for markets. The markets that I like the best are ones that are not crazy busy, but also not completely overbalanced with listings rather than sales. So, I'll do my basic test is when I'll look on Zillow, I'll do say I'm looking at 10 acres and 10 acres plus in a particular county. So I'll do 10 acres plus in a certain county, and I'll see how many properties sold there in the last 12 months. And then I'll look on the listed side and see how many are listed. Say 20 properties sold in that category in the last year. But then when I switch it to listed and I see that there's 40 properties listed, that's a property that's going to be tough to sell in. You've got to have a really nice property, or you've got to be priced really aggressively in order to stand out in that. Like there's an imbalance between sales and listing. So I like the ones that are pretty balanced. or maybe even, like busier than balanced. But, so if there's 20 listed and there's 20 sales in the last year, that's a decent market. It's better if it's, you know, th- uh, 30 sales and 20 listed, something like that. But that's kind of generally what I look at. But I'm sending out so much mail that I'm sending out into areas that are, busier than that, and some that are, slower than that. But I just, when we're negotiating on the property, we just kind of take that into consideration, that the market factors there. And obviously, if it's a very slow market, we've got to be way more aggressive on the price. If it's a really hot market, it gives us some room that we know that if it's a good property and we can still pick it up at a decent price, maybe we're not going to make double our money on it, but we'll still make some money on it, and it's going to sell. So it gives us some latitude. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And so, what types of criteria do you go after when actually pulling these counties, pulling leads from these counties? So you mentioned size, but are there any other criteria that you pull for in terms of like zoning or market value, things like that? Listen up, land fans. This is huge. We're bringing you the one and only Pace Morby, star of A&E's Triple Digit Flip and the mastermind behind $450 million in real estate deals. He's coming to our virtual meetup on Thursday, December 5th to share how he's applying his creative financing genius to land deals. Head to olfmeetup.com to save your spot today. That's olfmeetup.com. This is the kind of opportunity that changes everything.
Not really, not too much. I mean, we're pretty broad in our criteria. So I don't, I just kind of eliminate some of those typical things, so those typical non-sellers, I guess you could say, by scrubbing the list and stuff. But we're not too picky beyond that.
Excellent. So. And can you dive a little bit deeper into what you consider to be non-sellers?
Yeah, so it'd be people like owned by Fortune 500 companies, or owned by a municipality, or owned by an HOA, owned by the railroad, utility. Those types of things are never going to sell to us. It would be very rare that they would sell to us. But I tell you, I keep in all the LLCs and stuff like that, because I've bought from a lot of LLCs. I bought from a lot of churches, so I keep those in as well. You'll see those churches frequently show up on the list. So yeah, those are kind of the main ones that I stay away from. The HOAs are one thing that we end up getting a lot of calls from the HOA. Like if it'll sneak through and the HOA gets in one of our letters, they'll be like, "So you're interested in buying this? I'd have to take this up with the board, and I don't know if we could sell this," and all this stuff. And it's just kind of a mistake rather than anything else. But I would definitely recommend scrubbing those out.
That's really good advice. So stay away from HOA, right?
Yeah.
Excellent. So let's talk a little bit about what's your favorite marketing methods. Right now, you mentioned, you did mention mail, you mentioned text. Talk to us a little bit about what your marketing channels look like currently.
Yeah, it's 100% direct mail for us. We don't do any text at this point, but I'm not ruling it out in the future. I was at a few months ago, or a number of months ago, I was like, well, maybe I'll go down this road and kind of try to figure out the text thing, because I know a lot of other investors are doing it. But to be honest, our mail has worked well for us over time. So it costs us about $3,000 in mail costs for every deal that we do. So that's a great kind of return on the investment, where we're making, $23,000 average profit per deal.
Absolutely. That's great. And do you currently, is there a follow-up sequence that you use to your mail, or is it just like you hit it once and then move on to the next? What does that look like?
Yeah, so the areas that we like, we kind of have two things going on. We've got areas that we like and we bought properties in, we know that they work well. Those areas we kind of hit every 3 months, or roughly every 3 months. And then we have some mail that goes out that's kind of like test mail almost, but we're trying different counties and states out and things, and trying to get a deal in those areas to get a little bit of momentum, trying to build. And then once we get a deal there, obviously we're trying to find great agent to work with, and a good team to kind of put together in those areas. And we find that good team, then we kind of work that area over and over again. But we send out a lot of test mail, and some of those areas we just never get deals in. And I don't know why, but it just happens. Some areas don't work well. Maybe it's, maybe it's me. I don't know.
So, can you talk to us a little bit about the type of market, the type of mail piece that you're using? Is it a blind offer? Do you like neutral letters? What types of mail pieces do you use?
Yeah, it's a blind offer, and it's the same mail piece all the time. I've refined it over time, but it's a 2-page letter. First page is kind of explaining why we're contacting them, who we are, what we can do for them. Second page is an actual purchase agreement, a very simple 1-page purchase agreement, and that's it. And then we just send the envelopes that are the number 10 envelopes with the clear windows on them. Looks like a bill or something like that, so people actually open it.
That's great. And whenever you are doing these mail pieces, is there are you ever targeting the same person on your follow up, or is it generally just the same area when you do?
Oh yeah, the same people. Yeah, we'll remail the exact same list. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah.
So digging into your mail process a little bit more, sending these blind offers, for someone that's not really familiar with that particular strategy, can you kind of walk us through? You're running comps, so you're trying to find some type of value before you actually send out the mail piece. So what do the different stages of that process look like?
Yeah. So for the most part on our offers, we're doing rural vacant land type properties. So we're pricing on a county level. I'm not pricing my zip code. I'm not, I know that some investors get super complicated when it comes to their pricing. I price things on a county level, average pricing in that area. So I'll look at retail pricing in that area, and then I'll just back off depending on how busy the market is. I may be offering 45% of market value or 40% of market value, maybe even down to 35% if it's a very slow market. And then, so I'm just looking on Zillow or Redfin and looking at the comps and coming up with an average price per acre in those areas. And then I'm assigning a offer price per acre in those areas. And then we build out the spreadsheets and just use the multiplication thing, 10 acres at 3,000 an acre would be an offer price at 30,000, something like that. So that's how we do it. Yeah. Pretty simple. The thing is, I always tell people it's very difficult to price exactly on these offers. So it's kind of like a conversation starter in a way, and it's based off of averages because, you could be looking in one county and even the same street in a particular county. Say you've got one street, you've got 3 10-acre parcels. One of them is all farmland, one of them is all swamp, and one of them is all woodland. They're all going to have different values. You're not going to know any of that stuff based off of pricing by zip code, or none of that stuff's going to matter. It's just going to come down to the property itself. So when people respond and say we're too low on their offer, and they come back and they say, well, I want to sell, but I need this amount, and we'll look at the property and we'll see, okay, yeah, I can come up to that. It makes sense, after we evaluate their property in detail. Or sometimes we're too high. Sometimes they respond and we look at their property and it's 90% wetlands or on the side of a mountain or something like that. It's just not that great. It may be a property we're still interested in buying, but we have to adjust the price accordingly. We just give them a reason, like we didn't realize it was 90% wetlands. We didn't realize it was on the side of the mountain. And for those reasons, this is the best we can do. And either they'll be interested in selling, we can work out a deal, or they're not, and they get upset with me or whatever and go away. I don't know, but it's simply a conversation starter. So in my opinion, I think it's a pretty wasteful a waste of time in order to really refine that pricing to that type of level if you're looking at the rural properties. Now, subdivisions are a whole different thing. You can refine your pricing really pretty exact if you're pricing by subdivision, but those are different type of properties in the rural land.
Definitely. And I love that insight that, you're not going to do, so much due diligence and take so much time to get these offers. It's really just a conversation starter. It's really just like the fishing lure, right? To
Yeah, that's right.
get going. Yeah, that's really, really good. Really good insight there. So, whenever you're selling your properties, can you talk to us about the dispo side? You mentioned that you work with agents as well. So, what types of dispo activities? Is it all agents, or do you do other types of dispo activities to sell your properties?
Yeah, at this point, we're using agents to sell 100% of our properties. In a rare circumstance, we might have an issue where we can't find a good agent in an area, but at this point, I'm always finding someone. But I've had that in the past where I've had to kind of put it on the flat fee MLS myself and take the calls and stuff. But I don't like doing that. I really like using a land broker or agent in order to sell the property for us. So, and I always try to get the best ones in a particular area as well. So I don't really want to settle for, just anyone to take the listing either. So and to do that, I've got a whole pitch to the agents that we work with. I mean, I let them know that we're trying to build a team. We're trying to do a lot of deals with you. We pay 10% commission. We try to be the easiest and best client that they have, and hopefully we'll do a lot of business with them. So I know what it's like from the broker agent side of things. And, a lot of them are very skeptical of land investors just because they get a lot of calls from investors that just want to get a broker price opinion, and then they never ends up turning into anything. And then if it does turn into something, they want to offer them, 5 or 6% commission on a, $30,000 or $40,000 property. And when you do the math, they're going to make hardly anything on something like that. Say, for instance, you've got a $50,000 property, you're paying them 6% commission. That's a $3,000 total commission, but that's to be split between the listing broker and the buyer's agent broker. And then plus, so say it's a $3,000 commission, they split it, they get 1,500 for the listing side, 1,500 for the buyer's agent side, but then they've actually got to split. Most of them have a broker that they're working with as well, and they've got to give a portion to their broker. So they may end up with a check for $1,000 to spend all this time to sell this property, and just the incentives not as much there. So it's all about making money for them, just like it is for us. So you have to view things from their perspective, and paying an extra few percentage on commission is not going to change at all. I mean, I'd rather get the property sold. So that's the really important thing. I want them working for us rather than just put it on the MLS and wait for someone to send an offer.
Absolutely. And that was going to actually be my next question is how do you go about sort of assessing the quality of these agents? How do you find the very best? What are some key points that you look for?
Yeah, typically we'll look and we'll see who's done a lot of deals in that particular area, who's got a lot of listings, who seems to be the go-to land broker or agent in that area. And we always want ones that are focused on land, not, they may be doing big ranches with homes and stuff like that as well. But for the most part, it's land is their specialty. And we're just looking for ones that have a lot going on, and then when we call them, we talk to them, give them our pitch. Obviously, if we leave a message, do they call us back right away? Are they willing to give us opinions on our properties that we're buying? I kind of explained the process to them. I'm like, hey, during the due diligence process, we're just looking for your opinion on the property, the value. But then as soon as we close on it, we're giving you the listing. And the other thing is that, we're not going to waste your time. We're not going to ask you to go out to the property and take photos or walk the property before we close on it. So we always send a photographer out and to give us a report on the property so they don't have to do that thing. So I make it easy on them, and I let them know that we understand their perspective, and it's worked out really well for us. We found some awesome brokers and agents that have sold tons of properties for us in that way.
Yeah, I love that. And so, actively looking for people to be part of a team that you can continuously work with, right?
Yep.
And so how do you, what are your expectations of that agent beyond listing it on the MLS and waiting? How do you communicate your expectations, and what are those expectations?
Yeah, I don't micromanage them. I mean, I ask them about their processes, and most of them have the good ones already have a team, already have a process. They're doing They're putting it in the MLS. They're putting it on the land.com sites. They're sending out neighbor letters or postcards. They're blasting their buyers list. They've got their whole process of stuff they're doing. So I don't typically micromanage that type of stuff. We sign 6-month listing agreements, and then obviously if there's an issue and they're doing a good job, it just hasn't sold, and we'll extend it at that point. So we let them know that our goal is to sell it quickly, and typically we're pricing things so they do sell quickly. So I don't typically get into the micromanaging, and unless I look at their listings and I see a problem or something that could be improved or something like that, then I'll let them know that feedback. But I'm not on top of them and saying, hey, did you do this? Did you do that? I try to hire the good people that are going to do that stuff anyhow because they want to get that commission check.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, just a simple question of asking what's your process, and hearing what they say, how they answer that question will tell you everything you need to know, right?
Yep.
That's really good. So do you ever sell your properties on terms? Like, do you create notes, or is it always cash?
Always cash, but I have worked with someone that I got hooked up with here recently. Basically, he's got a program where I can offer owner financing terms, and then he buys the note for me at closing. So I've done one of those deals, and I'll probably do a couple more here in the near future, on an ongoing basis. Some properties that seems to be a really good option for, but I don't hold the paper and notes myself. I just I don't know. I just look at the numbers as far as what I can flip these properties for, and what I've had. If I had to tie up all that money for that long of a time, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Absolutely. No, that makes total sense of having that sort of built-in note buyer. So it's still essentially a cash deal for you, right?
Yep, that's right. Yep.
Yeah, that's excellent. So what would you consider to be your main deal breakers when looking at deals?
Looking at properties, you mean ones that I would
Yep.
not buy? Yeah.
Yeah. So like, let's say something comes across your desk and, you're taking a look at it. What are some of the things that are big, like no-nos? We're not going to touch those kinds of properties.
Yeah, so the big deal breakers for me are the things that cause a lot of problems. I've purchased properties like this in the past, like ones where the access, first of all, is a challenge. It may have, well, first of all, I don't buy landlocked properties. I did buy one landlocked property in the past, and I bought it so cheap that I was able to resell it cheap and made a couple of $1,000s, but it wasn't worth all the hassle. So I've kind of made that one of my criteria that I don't buy landlocked properties anymore. I'm not saying there isn't money to be made on those, especially if you're focused on that niche, and there's different exit plans that you can do with those. But so no landlocked properties. I really try to stay away from really sloped properties. They always seem to take a long time for me to resell, and even if I'm getting them really cheap, it seems like they're not cheap enough, and I don't end up making the kind of profit that I thought I was going to make on them. So access, slope. If they're entirely wetlands, that's a problem. If they are, small building lots that, don't won't perk or something like that. So things like that, are big kind of red flags for me.
Got it. Very good. What would you consider to be the most important needle moving actions to take daily as a newbie land investor?
Yeah. Well, you've got to put an ultra consistent plan in place for your lead generation. That's the biggest key to this business. So for me, our lead generation is direct mail. So we're very, very consistent about our direct mail. Every 2 weeks, we send out a new list, and we're up to about 100,000 a month right now. So if that wasn't in place, if that wasn't working like clockwork, there's no way I do nearly as many deals as I do. Most land investors get stuck in this kind of roller coaster where they're sending out a batch of mail, the phone starts ringing, they get busy, they're starting to chase down and put together all these deals. By the time the activity slows down, they realize that they need to get another list together, and it takes time, and put the list together, and then it takes time for the mail to be sent out and the lead time for the people to get the mail. And then they're continuously on this roller coaster, and it doesn't need to be that way. If they would just focus on getting that mail out specifically, or whatever lead generation method you're using text or whatever, like, you've got to be very consistent about those numbers. So that drives the whole business. It's the fuel to the whole thing. If you're not doing that side of things, then nothing else works. But if you are doing that and you are doing consistently, then everything else works. So it's very simple, but it's hard to do. So if you're not the type that can actually do that yourself, you need to get a staff member or someone that can drive that, and that's their main focus, is they can consistently do that. Even if you're, you got an assistant that their whole job is just to make sure you hit that schedule, then it's money well spent, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's great. That's really, really great advice. We also see oftentimes investors, when things are slow and the deals aren't coming in, or they're not closing on deals, or let's say they've just had a rough patch, right? The first place that most investors like to cut is, I'm going to send a little bit less mail. And
Yes.
then that turns into, now I have fewer deals in my pipeline, and now I have nothing coming in, and now my business is at a standstill,
It's
right?
the exact opposite move you should be doing. Yes.
That's
Yeah.
really good. It's the exact opposite. When things get
Yes.
slow, more lead gen,
Yep.
right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Because when
definitely.
you have deal, everything works better because you're not moving forward with marginal deals. When you have tons of leads and tons of lead flow, you're not moving forward on marginal deals, which is then going to cause you problems down the road. You're not going to make as much profit. It's going to take longer to sell those things. It just causes more problems. So if you get the lead gen side thing taken care of, and you're bringing in that consistent deal flow, it is, the whole thing just works.
Yeah, it's the lifeblood of the business for
Yeah.
sure.
Yep.
For sure. So, what is, in your opinion, something that no one or very few people are talking about in our land industry that we should be talking about right now?
Well, I mean, I think that there's a lot of opportunity in areas that maybe a lot of investors aren't kind of focusing on. So I think there's opportunities in every area, even if they're really rural areas or really maybe areas that aren't as busy, something like that. I mean, if you're able to buy properties in those areas for the right price and then resell them from the right price, there are going to be buyers there. So I think that's one thing. I think sometimes that a lot of the energy and a lot of marketing gets focused on certain spots, and then outside there's those spots, there's not as much activity, but there's still quite a bit of opportunity as long as you work it you work it correctly. So I think that's one thing. I think that there's going to be some financial products and more things that are going to help investors along the way, like land investors kind of thrive in this business. Like we were talking about, hard money for homes. That's a very developed market. I can foresee that kind of happening a little bit in the land business. Um, it's just the lenders have to be able to understand land. That's I think the big key, because most of them don't understand land, so they need to bring someone on their team that actually does understand, so they can know which loans are good loans and which ones are not good loans.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good stuff. So, um, what would you consider to be your superpower?
I'm consistent, very consistent. Everything I do is kind of very regimented. My wife makes fun of me because I eat the same thing every day, that kind of thing. Go to the gym same time every day. I'm just very, very regimented type person. So I know it's boring, but I think that's kind of my consistency. And obviously it helps me get our mail out in a consistent level. And I think that makes the whole business work, like we were talking about.
There you go. I love it. If it's not broke, right?
Yeah, that's right.
That's great. So, who are some of your favorite business owners, entrepreneurs, financial influencers that you like to follow?
Yeah, well, I really like what Alex Hermosi is doing. He's a lot of things that really make sense to me. I wrote a book called $100 Million Offers. You might have read it probably, but
Absolutely.
he's just has a very good way of explaining things and breaking things down and logically speaking about it. There you go.
Right
It's a
here on
great
my
book,
desk,
isn't it?
always.
Yeah, it's a great book. I just think his content is pretty awesome. Um, in the land space, Seth Williams, obviously he does a great job with all his content. I think it's very interesting. So I like listening to his podcast as well. And there's just a lot of business people that Richard Branson, I always thought he was really pretty cool and just willing to kind of take chances. And when he saw an opportunity, he just went for it. So
Yeah,
I really like that about him. Yeah.
absolutely. Fantastic stuff. And so, what's the biggest surprise that you've had so far on your land journey?
Biggest surprise on my land journey. Well, um, I can't really think of anything that's been a huge surprise for me, aside from the fact that I mean, I don't know. I feel like the numbers you're able to achieve in this business and the types of deals that are out there and things are kind of I'm kind of surprised that there are those types of deals out there to be had, on a regular basis. And I think a lot of people in other niches in real estate investing, they kind of when I talk about land investing, kind of the numbers we're hitting and things like that, they're kind of um they almost don't believe it in a way. They think there's some sort of catch or something like that. So I'm just surprised, I guess, that investors from other niches maybe haven't focused more on the land side of things. Um, so
Yeah.
I guess that would be a surprise. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely get that. I mean, land can certainly be not as glamorous as, fix and flip, for example.
Yeah.
So maybe that contributes to it. I don't know, but
Yep.
money is pretty exciting.
Yeah. That's the exciting part. When you really do the math, if you're selling if you're, making, say you're buying a property and you're selling it for 40,000, you're doing that in 60 or 90 days and you keep that money moving, your return on investment is going to be astronomical after a while. It just snowballs.
Absolutely. And the speed. I mean,
Yeah.
the fix and flip background, the
Yeah.
speed is just crazy
Yep.
sometimes. That's excellent. So, if you could go back and tell yourself three pieces of advice as a newbie investor, what would they be?
Get really good at evaluating properties because you avoid so many problems if you really understand what's a good deal, what's not a good deal, properties to buy, properties to stay away from. So if you get really confident on that, like evaluating properties, understanding what makes a good property, what makes a bad property, what's valuation, I think that's super super important. Also the valuation side of things, always be conservative in your estimates. I know it's easy when you get, especially when you first start getting deals in, and I remember looking back in some of the first deals I was looking at, I was always looking at the highest comps and thinking, oh, okay, this is just like that property, I'm sure we could sell it for that. So I was like overly optimistic. And then as I started doing deals, I started realizing, well, it's better to base your projections on the lower comps. If you can beat it, great. But in a lot of times, even if you base it off of the lower comps, you may not be able to hit that type of number all the time anyhow, just because of, each property is different and things you didn't realize and stuff like that. So it's better to be really conservative in your projections, and that'll keep you out of doing some bad deals or ones that you just waste a lot of time on, where you put out a lot of money and you bought this property and then you held it for 6 months and you didn't make any money. And that's kind of a waste of time and money and effort. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. So, and then,
Yeah.
did you were you looking for a third one? I'm not sure. I got a
Yeah, if
third
you
one
got
for
a third one, we'd love to hear it. If not, that's okay.
yeah,
Those
I'll stop at
great.
2.
Okay, perfect. No, yeah, it definitely is super enticing to look at, like, oh, I could make this much money on
Yes.
the deal. That stay away from that conversation because
Yes.
that'll definitely trick you up. So, what's your biggest passion or goal you'd like to achieve at this point in your life?
Well, I would love to, I've got my daughters involved in this business as well. I mean, they've started flipping some properties on their own. They've actually flipped, I think it's maybe 7 properties at this point. They saw what I was doing. And these are older daughters. They're 21 and 23 now, but they started a couple years ago. But they had $8,000 set aside between them, and they're like, "Hey, Dad, can you show us how to do this and everything?" I was having them do some work for me and comping properties and just kind of trying to learn the business. And they thought, well, we could do this too. So I ended up kind of throwing them a couple of the smaller deals that I was not that excited about doing. They took the $8,000 that they initially invested, $4,000 for each of them, and they parlayed that into 84,000. So,
Wow.
yeah, and now they're sending out their own mail. So this is kind of another step. They're actually took all the steps to make theirs into a real business, just like any other investor, not me sending them my extra deals or anything.
Right? Right?
So yeah, that's exciting to me. I'd love to be able to get my kids set up so they can have a fully functioning business and kind of call the shots in their life. If money is not a concern, then everything else seems to work out much better in life.
Oh, that's really good. That's a
Yeah.
really good insight, definitely. And so, what makes you feel inspired or like your best self?
Yeah, I mean, I'm big on the environment, so we live in a pretty nice area here in Southern California just because and it's expensive, but it's a very inspiring spot and everyone around here is doing really well. And so I like to be in environments like that where you're kind of in areas where you're always striving to do better than what you are. So I always look at environment, and I think it has a big impact, and it's not something that's really evident. It kind of doesn't make sense, I guess, when you think about it logically, like, well, you should be able to do the same thing from wherever you're at. But for me, it's not the case. I'm the type that's kind of highly influenced by my environment. I think my mindset really.
Oh yeah, I think that's absolutely fascinating because I think that that's a component that's often overlooked is the environment that you're in. We
Yeah.
talk a lot about mindset and like your inner thought life and that kind of thing, and all of that is important. But it's not to say that the environment, the external, is not important either. Like it's
Yep.
super, super important, right?
For me, it is. Yes, definitely.
Definitely understand that. That's beautiful. Well, I want to thank you so much for giving to us today, Pete. This has been absolutely remarkable. How can we give back to you right now? What resources or connections are you looking for currently?
Well, I don't have any specific things, I guess, that I need at the moment, but it would be great for anyone that's listening if you're interested in land flipping to join our community. Just trying to grow my community, which you can find at landconquest.com. And like I said, there's a free training program that's within there, and it's not your typical throwaway, free course or something like that you're used to getting online for giving away your email address. No, it's an actual like free training program that might cost thousands from other sources or whatever. But and then obviously if you have deals that you're looking to get funded, and then just go to partnerwithpete.com and fill out the form, and maybe we can partner on that deal. If it's a great deal, I definitely would like to do that. And then if you're looking for insight into the business, like I said, I do a monthly income report, and that can be found at turningprofit.com. And that's where I break down the land flipping business and my progression over time. I've been doing it for the income report for quite some time now, so you can see how things have grown over time. Got another thing on there where I broke down the 50 first deals that I did in the business. So that's
Nice.
a fun thing to look at as well. So you could see exactly, each of those first 50 deals, what I bought it for, the acreage, what I learned on it, what I sold it for, how many days I held it for, all that kind of stuff. So
Wow, I love
yeah.
that. So many great resources. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. We certainly appreciate it. I love the impact that you're making and it's just super exciting and inspiring to see the things that you're doing. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Well, thanks, Kendall. Appreciate it.
Thank you guys so much for joining us. This has been absolutely incredible, Pete. Thank you for being so generous with your time and your information. If you would like to listen to past episodes or future episodes of our podcast, you can check out the link in the chat. We're on Apple, Spotify, several other platforms as well. If you'd like to join our free community, continue the chat there. You can get us at onlylandfans.com. Again, that's onlylandfans.com. Be very careful when you're entering that in. You want to make sure that you get that exact right URL in. And then if you'd like to watch any of the video versions of our podcast, you can check out our YouTube channel. The link is there in the chat again. And of course, all of Pete's information will be in our show notes as well with all of his links. So super excited about that. Thank you guys so much. Everyone have a great week. We look forward to seeing you next time. Until then, be great. Have a great week, and we'll catch you in the next one. Bye-bye. If you're interested in hearing from other seven-figure land flippers about how they've started and run their businesses, then join us at onlylandfans.com. Looking forward to seeing you there.